Hello, and welcome to this new, as yet untitled show, where we want to take you through the American elections every single week. We listen to you. You said you wanted content around international affairs, and that's what we're going to be doing. As you can see, we're socially distanced. In fact, we're in different cities. And the reason we're doing this is because we've got elections coming up very, very soon. And we want to give you a breakdown of all the moving parts so you get a sense of what's going on. And yet have some fun whilst we're doing it too. So subscribe, join the TCS Network, and you'll be able to see this and conversations like this every single week. Today I'm joined by Michael Mpofu, who is our new political editor. Mike, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Yeah, thank you for having me, MT. I'm going to call you that just to save people confusion. Otherwise, it's going to be Mike. Yeah, thanks for having me. As you said, one of the editors on the network, and essentially ton of experience in politics, mainly gained from in my time in South Africa. Worked for the official opposition. Worked on the 2014 campaign. And then later spent about 4.5 years in the regional government in strategic comms. So that's fun. And now this is what we do. We're part of the network, and we're hoping to move that conversation forward.
Well, I think one thing that's immediately quite interesting to me is obviously because of your background in comms. I think it's the whole comms of the American elections is very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So what we hope to do to everyone listening is over the next few weeks or so, in the lead up to the election, we want to get progressively deeper into all the issues. So this is in many ways a kind of introductory conversation around all the moving parts, the optics, Donald Trump and the Democratic presumptive nominee, Joe Biden, discussing just what's going on and giving you a sense of what might be happening. But the reason why you should subscribe is because we're going to progressively get deeper, and hopefully, you stay around for that. But with the intros done, I guess I haven't done mine. My name is Michael Mani. I'm the editor-in-chief of the TCS Network, and it's my job, I guess, to ensure that we are getting a nice, rounded, holistic view of what's happening. And so I'll be trying to balance Michael's. I don't know where do you sit politically, Mike? And I guess, it's hard doing political spectrum stuff because obviously America is different to the UK.
Correct. Yeah.
But let's and you're from South Africa, so it must be even more complicated. But
yeah,
let's
correct.
UK first. So where would you place yourself in the political spectrum in the UK, and then in America?
In the UK,
where would you put yourself?
Can I not leave the people guessing? I think that's even better.
You think?
To judge yeah, I think so. Look, it is complex because, when you're dealing with South African politics, they're different systems. British politics is different, America is different. In the UK, it's hard to say because I don't particularly enjoy to put myself in, kind of a box, as it were, but not to sound wishy and washy. I'd probably be slightly right of center. So in a good world, I could have voted Liberal Democrat. In a good world. But, the Liberal Democrats are non-existent for now. And so let's leave it there.
Okay. And in America, so suppose we're considering the American context, that would make you a corporate Democrat?
Well, yeah, in the American context.
You're a Republican. Would you say you're a Republican?
Oh, no, that would be a stretch too far for me in the American context, purely because I find that, the broad church that should be the Republican Party isn't as broad. I feel like in American politics, quite extreme. They tend to be one or the other, and there's very little room for kind of a middle ground or a sensible middle ground. So that's also another, interesting aspect that we can maybe pick up on, especially, in the coming weeks, given how I find it intriguing that the Republicans, to an extent, have let Trump, rule the roost.
Absolutely.
Including seasoned Republicans, who should at the very least, we're going, guys, we need to salvage our party. When Trump is gone, what now? And I don't think there's anyone, I haven't seen any signs at least of a rebuilding. And perhaps the same could be said for the Democrats, but I'm getting ahead of myself, forgive me.
Yeah, no, that's all good. I mean, in the interest of fairness, and people always wonder, where do you sit, Mike? It's hard for me to say because, I identify, if I had to pick some sort of title or some sort of group identity, I would say probably libertarian is probably the best. I'm very.
Would you? Oh my God! Yeah. Oh my God! Okay, when you say libertarian,
you sound so shocked and sad. So put it this way. I just believe a lot of good, and I put that in inverted quotation marks, that should be done in the world should be done by private citizens and private individuals. I believe in a very small state, because I think the state
free
gets
market.
Wrong.
Yeah.
And so what the libertarian worldview allows is it allows for churches, charities, and
100%.
private individuals to build the kind of world they want to build. I don't think government should be doing that, but I don't, again, that's very different in the American. So in America, I'd be considered the classical liberal, I guess. Whereas in the UK, there aren't really libertarians like that. I would be considered a conservative. In the way really,
I would say it's conservative-ish, because in the UK, I feel like the conservative church essentially is a lot broader in that spectrum.
Absolutely.
So you have the wing of libertarians in there. Some of the guys in the back benches are very libertarian, even the way that they've been pushing for, how we've managed the coronavirus. Then you also have the slightly, more centric school of thought that says, yes, definitely free market, but with some regulation, etc. So I wouldn't say you're too far off in finding a home.
Yeah,
I must convince you to join me in the center here.
Well, this is the thing. I was talking to a senior editor at The Economist just 2 days ago, and we're talking about the kind of the changing of the political groupings, especially amongst millennials and young people, because I think young people more and more are falling out of love with this left-wing, right-wing continuum. We're seeing a rise in issue-based voters voting based on climate change, for instance. But also, if we consider post-materialism, which is what dominates typically a lot of metropolitan cities, we're kind of more interested in personal identity and self assertion and stuff like that, more than we are economic trends, open versus closed, nationalism and globalism and stuff like that. But without getting much into that, I want to ask you why you think the next election matters, because folks listening to us now may be thinking, well, listen, there's a bomb blast. Sorry, not a bomb blast. There's an explosion that's happened in Beirut. There's confusion still over the coronavirus and where a vaccine will be made available. I mean, Donald Trump said in the news just yesterday that he thinks by November there should be a vaccine, which is just I mean, it's like, what? How? Where did you? How? What? Where? When? And even Fauci went on the news after, was like, no. No one's given a date. He was saying that he hopes that that because of the political pressure, health agencies won't curtail all the normal checks just to get it out, and he's confident about that. But on that question of why this matters, why does this next election matter, and why should people around the world, why should our audience, which is predominantly in the UK, why should they care about this?
Yeah, well, look, it's no secret that America is the UK's closest ally, and to kind of do away with the clever speak ally, we're talking about ally, and I'm not talking about it in the context of BLM, by the way. I'm talking about it from a trade and security perspective. So, to put it very simply, they're our big brother, and we need to keep Big Brother on side, because Big Brother's got the biggest guns. He's got a lot more money and a significant amount of influence all over the world. And what that does is we need to stay in good books with Big Brother. But more than that, I think it's because America historically has always set the tone for the conversation globally, especially free market trade globalization, health, and it's intriguing that, you know, under Trump, we've seen him leave the WHO, or make a move to leave the WHO. We've seen him make an aggressive and quite blatant move in trying to block Chinese influence in the world over, ironically, while trying to cozy up to Russia. Very complex in the way that he's gone about that. That's the truth. It's very complex. So why should we care? Because America, whether we like it or not, has a lot of global influence and reach that affects our lives. Whether we like it or not, tariffs, trade, political influence. And that's why you get things like, you know, the state secretary flying over to the UK to say, guys, don't sign the contract with Huawei. And we have to take that seriously. Because we share everything, intelligence, we share, you know, state secrets and so forth. So whether we like it or not, like 2016 did, this next 2020 election will set the tone for how the next 4 or 5 years are going to play out in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, and I guess in America as well, there's a big, I mean, I hate to get all kind of biblically dramatic on us, but I think this next election will determine whether the Trump saga is seen as this fluke, this aberration in American history, or whether it's the announcement of the new order of things. This bombastic commercialization, I think, and debasing, in my opinion, of the political office, will that continue? And will we continue to see this America, this retreating, this very nationalistic America? Or will we see, I guess, a throwback into globalization, which is what I think Joe Biden, to jump ahead, would represent. So we're at crossroads. And I know we said we were with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. But in some senses, we didn't really know what crossroads those were, because we were still kind of getting to understand the Trump phenomenon. We still didn't quite understand it. Whereas now we get it. I think Trumpism. Whilst Trumpism may not make that much sense politically, I can't speak to a cogent political desire he has, but I can definitely speak to a tone and a style with the ridiculous amount of executive orders being signed. He's he's petulant when it comes to working with Congress. I mean, we can see a standard being set for the type of governance we're going to see, and thereby, and by extension, the tone. If we look at the major players, then let's start with Donald Trump. And I'm struggling here because I want to keep this a nice, light, you know.
No, do it. Let's go there.
I don't want to get into it because I know people are like, get in, and I do want to get in. But let's start quite light and look at Donald Trump and just say, so for those who don't know, Donald Trump is going to be up against, unless something happens, and let's be honest, anything can happen, Joe Biden. So let's do a character analysis of sorts for both of them and look at how they've been performing recently in interviews and on media appearances. So let's start with Donald Trump. Did you see that HBO interview?
I am one of millions, I'm sure, all over the world that watched the HBO interview, which dropped a few days ago, from the time that we're recording this. And I watched it a few. I'm one of those guys who obsess over something. So when I watch something, I like to watch it at different times to gain different perspectives, to make sure I was thinking right or hearing right, etc. I watched the HBO interview, and hopefully, if you're watching this, you'll know what we're talking about. If not, go check it out. And I thought to myself, the first reaction was, this is hilarious. The second reaction was, oh my goodness, this guy is unprepared. The third reaction I had, and I think that's when I texted you, I said, they should fire the press secretary for organizing the sit down. Why would you, genuinely, if you're Donald Trump's comms guy, why would you, and this is where my comms thing kicks in, I'm even getting excited here, is because you put your boss, especially in an election year, in the area of his or her greatest strength. Now, my boss, my old boss, her greatest strength, put her in a room, crowds, just any amount of crowd, the bigger the room, the more she would rise to the occasion. It's like she just lit up and she was able to capture a room. So you want to put your executive authority in an environment like that. This is the second interview, by the way, Mike. The first interview that Donald's done recently, the exclusive, I think it was 3 weeks ago, he did a sit down with the guys from Fox News in the garden of the White House. Again, we had the paper shuffling and we're number one. Where? In the world. It's like, we have the lowest rank. Where? In the world. And it's like, no, that's a lie. So I think for me, the HBO interview, to put it very simply, was we saw an exposed Trump. We saw an unprepared Trump. We saw a Trump who thought he could get away with platitudes and one-liners, and repeating essentially the China line, and repeating calling it the Chinese virus to try and shift the blame and the attention, repeating the testing line. We've tested so much, that's why we have so many cases, and repeated we closed down the biggest or the best economy in decades. The problem with that is Trump wasn't speaking essentially to his constituency, and I think that's where they failed. The White House comms team failed. You don't put Trump in an environment like that, he's not going to speak to his constituency. He's speaking to people like you and I who are actually going to interrogate what he's saying. So that was for me, if you're talking about from a comms perspective, it's a big letdown, and it's a shame really, because I'm still trying to figure out the logic behind that.
I mean, yes, I mean, if people haven't seen it yet, they should take a look. I think you mentioned it had been pulled down from. Well, from the UK, we can't watch it on YouTube. I don't know why, but I'm sure somewhere in the world you can check it out. There'll be a link somewhere. Someone's got it. Yeah, someone's got it. But it's quite interesting because that's the one thing I spent time thinking about as well. What's the strategy here? You'll remember his last election campaign was ran by Steve Bannon, who's now infamous, we know. But at least with Steve Bannon, we were aware of his playbook somewhat.
Correct.
Say something outrageous, then flesh out the details once you have people's interests. We understood when Steve Bannon was behind something.
Yeah.
This new Brad Pascal, I don't know how you pronounce his name. He's the new digital strategist for Donald Trump's 2020 campaign. This one kind of shocked me a bit because there's a number of things that could be going on here. In one sense, we could have maybe this is an attempt to, kind of help him with muscle memory, get behind the cameras, just start getting used to speaking again, because you're going to need to win over some new constituents for the upcoming election. So there's that there. Yeah. Two, it could be Donald Trump himself saying, get me in front of the cameras. Like, I want to speak to ordinary people. The people who don't watch those daily press briefings, get me in front of the camera. I want to speak to them. Or it could be the political strategist himself saying, Trump, you need to get back out there, and you need to win over some people, because unfortunately you're not there. Or it could be Donald Trump saying, people haven't talked about me for a while.
I need to get back out there.
How do I just get my name out there? Because at this stage, any publicity is good publicity. So it could be one or a mixture of all those different reasons. But one thing that was quite odd is just how ill-prepared he was. I mean, those bar charts he was holding were so infantile. But they were designed like red, blue, and yellow, and where at the top, I'm thinking, who drew this? Like, this is just so poor.
Yeah, it is. You're spot on. It could be a combination of reasons. I suspect, and I live in America, whatever, but I just suspect there's an attempt to shift, because if you look at the reintroduction of the coronavirus press briefings, there is a clear indication, whether it's their own internal polling and the other polls that are released on a weekly, that Americans are clearly concerned about the coronavirus, and there was a sense that Trump was becoming a lot more removed from it. And I suspect it was a White House call that, hey, we need to talk a lot more about the coronavirus. Whether we like it or not, it's going to play a role in the election. The challenge that Trump has is that he's not willing to concede. And of course, who in power would concede that they flopped it? But I think it's the how, obviously, that they're going about it. And for a president, it's pretty shocking, especially for a president of the free world, it's pretty shocking. And whether we like it or not, I think Trump, even in middle America, which is where a strong kind of the forgotten white working class people tend to emerge from, I think there'll be a strong sense that you might have let us down during the coronavirus. And I think that's why he's feeling the heat to kind of ramp that up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess if you look at where Trump's standing right now, he is in trouble somewhat. Which takes us to this next question I want to discuss, which is, could Trump actually be reelected? It's one of the things that we've been us political commentators have been salivating over, trying to work out all the different ways it could work. I've been looking a lot at history, looking at, I mean, the coronavirus is obviously unprecedented. That's that word you've heard like every 5 minutes on the news.
Yeah, every news channel.
Unprecedented. So I'm trying to work out, well, what times, I'm looking after the Vietnam War, I'm looking at all these different parts of history and seeing, well, when have we been in a similar situation before, and what's happened after? So yeah, we'll start then. And like, do you think Donald Trump could actually be reelected?
I think we ignore Donald Trump at our own peril. What 2016 taught us, and what 2016 taught me, and should have taught every political junkie out there, is that, what we thought was entertainment. Because if I'm honest, that's what I thought. I thought this is just great television. It's exciting entertainment. Once the adults get together and vote, Hillary will crack on. That was the truth. But what 2016 taught us as well is a lesson in messaging. And this is where I think Steve Bannon comes in. This is where, and I'm going to say his name, Dominic Cummings comes in, if you're in the UK. You know, one thing that those boys got so right, even in the Brexit campaign, is just messaging. Trump's messaging in 2016, you know, the fact that there was the forgotten, middle America, the forgotten working class, that's how we pitched it. The fact that China were taking their job, Chinese were taking their job. China. Yeah, exactly. The fact that the war and Mexico and immigration. So those three things that I mentioned are just with clear, concise points that were easy to grasp and just easy to digest if you were, whether you like it or not really politically engaged. And whether we like it or not, there were concepts that were affecting people's income and those bread and butter issues. Same for Brexit. I think they nailed the messaging part. So could Trump get reelected? I think he could if there is a strong, aggressive, targeted messaging campaign that his campaign roll out, that his team rather roll out in the next 80 odd days. If I were Trump, what would I do? And I'm just putting myself in Donald Trump's shoes. I'm calling Steve Bannon. Yeah. Because Steve Bannon is the guy that said to him, I think Trump was like 16 points down, if I'm not mistaken, and they were like 50 or 40 odd days out. And Steve Bannon is the guy who said to him, you could still win this 100%. This is how we're going to do it. Yeah. So he still can win, because there's the notion, I think, in America of the silent majority. And that's the other truth, Mike. Echo chambers, where you and I were just engaging and we're going with junkies and we're having a great time. But the truth is, there's a guy in rural Wisconsin who says, do you know what? I own a farm. I don't want China here. I'm going to vote, coronavirus or not. Trump's the guy. So he could win. That's my view. Yeah, well, I mean, the truth of the matter is it's a 50-50 race. So, of course, he could win. I mean, that's always there. And I guess on a simple level, folks might say, well, you know, suburban voters are going to migrate towards Joe Biden, and senior people are going to rethink their support because, Donald Trump hasn't lived up to the bill. But I think there are three different things we have to look at. And we get this if we go back in history a little bit, right? So if you think about what the job of a president is at the most basic level, it's obviously to keep Americans employed, to make sure Americans are safe, and to ensure that new people are coming into the fold all the time. And the jobless rate right now in America stands at around 11%,
right? This is
Yeah.
3% more than when Jimmy Carter lost the election in 1980 and when George Bush was defeated in 1992. So on the employment figures alone, there's a problem there. Now, of course, he'll say, well, it's the coronavirus, we're heading towards a recession, so on and so forth. But that's not a strong position to play from. The fact that people materially don't have jobs. And as such, they feel like, you know, it's not even like, oh, people won't go, well, I lost my job due to Corona, but Donald Trump is doing a good job. They go, I lost my job, I'm blaming the government, right?
Yeah.
The second thing is obviously, and in fact, probably the first thing a government has to do is to keep the people safe. COVID has killed over 140,000 people in America, right? That's twice as many people that died in the Vietnam War, which meant that Lyndon B. Johnson couldn't come back because folks go, literally, you know,
why did you take us to Vietnam?
People have died. You can't be reelected after that amount of death, right? And currently, and I'm all kind of, you know, my master's was in political science, philosophy, and politics, but I spent a lot of time looking at Poland and so imagine how sad I was when the polling for Hillary Clinton revealed what I thought it did, and then the actuality didn't. So let's be clear about this third point, which is that polls can be wrong. But
that's the point. But you know what's crazy though? If we look at the precedent, Trump's approval rating as an incumbent is currently at 38%, according to Gallup. The last person to win a re-election after being 38 down,
having Poland less than 40%. Do you know who it is?
Am I guessing?
Yeah, take a guess.
Bill Clinton. So guess.
No, Harry Truman in 1940.
Oh my gosh.
So that's the last time we had an incumbent with an approval rating of less than 40% actually win. So Trump's currently at 38. And so if you look at those three different things, he's not in a strong position. And you can see why they would say you need to get out and speak to the people again.
Yeah, totally.
So we get that. However, the issue is, though, whilst all that's the case, he's facing Joe Biden, who I think it's his election to lose. So what do you make of Joe Biden then? And his and you know his media appearances and chances.
Yeah, Mike. You know, sorry, MT. You hit it on the nail on the head there. It's his election to lose. Joe Biden, obviously, Barack Obama's VP, 2 terms, fantastic. Personally, as someone who would hope, and this is where I have a bone to pick with both the Republicans and the Democrats. Purely because 2016, Trump gets elected. If you're a party that's just lost the election, the first and foremost thing that should be at the front of your mind is how do we rebuild? I've not seen enough rebuild strategies that are being played out, especially from the Democrats, to go, we need to prepare a candidate that's worthy.
Exactly.
I haven't seen that. They gave us, what's that guy's name? That mayor, Buttigieg, whatever I pronounce his surname.
It's
Pete.
Edge.
Yeah, exactly. They gave us
Mayor Pete is easier.
Yeah, Mayor Pete. They gave us Elizabeth Warren. I know you were a slight fan for a season.
I'm a massive Elizabeth
Warren stan. But and then they gave us Joe Biden. And then the whole, and then for a second, Mike Bloomberg threw his name in there.
He threw his money in there and got.
Threw his money in there and he lost it overnight. The point I'm making is that it just really feels like there wasn't any thought into, guys, how do we literally prepare and prepare ourselves for an election 4 years from now that can reposition us. Joe, I will say this: if in another time against another candidate, Joe would be very underwhelming. As just looking in and going, right now, if you said to me, Michael, so what are the 3 things that Joe wants to do, policy-wise? I could tell you, but I would be waffling for a long time because that's just how he comes across. Joe has also had the benefit of having some things handed to him on a platter. So when Trump tear gasses people to go to church to get a photo op, that's just perfect, easy campaign material. BLM movement, Black Lives Matter, the killing of George Floyd, that's easy win. Joe just has to come out and say, look at this basically white supremacist, So I think Joe has been underwhelming at a huge level, because I haven't heard personally, and simply this, any new or fresh ideas coming out of Joe's campaign. He recently had a conversation, and I was just talking about it with Barack Obama. It's this socially distant conversation. It's on YouTube. Check it out. And it just felt like they were reminiscing on the good old Obama years, but I didn't get a sense that there was anything new coming out and anything fresh. I walked away from the conversation feeling like, so guys, what was the purpose of the socially distant conversation? If you have a former president endorsing you, you want to be able to come out and go, these are the three things that these chaps were tackling. I know they mention healthcare, they mention diplomacy, they mention, but it's just a mention. I don't get a set, and they mentioned that Joe's empathetic. That was the other thing. Oh, Joe, you're quite an empathetic guy, And he obviously touches on his son who's recently passed away. So I think Biden, it's his to lose, but I also think his messaging hasn't been the strongest.
Yeah, but the thing though, it's so hard for him to have this, because you gotta ask yourself, after this massive, unprecedented destruction of the American economy, American social life, what does America need next? And the problem with Joe Biden is, here's a man who first started representing Delaware in 1970.
Yeah.
So he's been a senator, and unsuccessfully sought the presidency. I think he tried in 2008. He also tried in 1988.
It was the 80s. Well, yeah, you're right.
So the problem is, he's got so much baggage, and as such, when you look at this unprecedented time we're in, well, I do think there's the jury's out on two things. One is whether America wants a progressive, let's move forward, let's rebuild, let's grow and become the greatest country in the earth again. And this is, messaging reasons.
Yeah.
Or it says we've lost our way, which is what Joe Biden's gone for. We need to restore the soul of America. We've tried this crazy guy, which ended in so on and so forth.
Chaos.
Let's go back now and go back to a time where America had dignity and integrity, and we were a world leader, we were the world police, and all these kind of things. So I think the jury's out on what I think would be most effective. I don't think I'm sold that America needs a progressive message right now. I think right now, even after the Vietnam War, after any massive social ripping, if you like, people typically retreat.
Yeah.
And they want to go back to what's comfortable and what they know, what they like. So in a way, I'm not sure if his messaging has been underwhelming. I think they've made a decision to go for that. And also think about it. Joe Biden would be the oldest president ever. The idea that he would be like, oh, then I'm taking us to the future, is that are
you being ageist, Mike?
Of course not.
You're being ageist.
But I don't think that message. But I mean, what do you think? Because I don't think that message could come out of Joe Biden's mouth.
No, I'm not saying it should.
Forceful.
I'm not saying it should. I think all I'm arguing for is, because for me, the ideas should have nothing to do with his age. Whether it's a new idea or not, when I say new idea, I'm talking about that same notion of how do you rebuild post a pandemic, no job. Remember, when Mubarak took over in 2009, he was elected off the back of the world's craziest recession.
That's true.
People forget that Mubarak took over in the middle of the craziest time of our lives. Like, the world had no money, but he still brought fresh ideas. And whether, the jury's out again, depending on who you are, on his success as president, whether it was overwhelming or underwhelming, fantastic. But the power of the idea can never be disputed. And I think all I'm saying is, Joe's ideas haven't felt fresh. I don't need you to be 50 years old to give me a fresh idea. I don't need you to be 25 to give me a fresh idea. You could be 25 and try and take me back to Truman. or you could be 70 odd and say, hey, let's build for generations. So I think the nuance of the soul of the nation and healing is great. But I think if you're economics, building, if you're in business and you're saying, where are we investing our money? Based on whatever Joe says, what's the stock price saying? You're a bit nowhere because Joe is just fluffy. It's airy-fairy. It's this, let's feel good about ourselves again and I'll be a shoulder to cry on. And maybe it sounds a bit harsh, but I just think Joe could have done better to this point anyway.
Yeah. And I guess if his interviews are anything to go by, you know, he needs a lot of help. I mean, what have you made of some of the what I recently heard him say was that African Americans aren't diverse.
Yes. He said the comment was around
aren't as diverse as Latinos.
He said, yeah, Latinos, they're more diverse. And that's the challenge. I think Joe, unfortunately, his mouth doesn't help his cause.
Really random stuff there. I was like, huh?
Yeah. That's the other thing. You know, he doesn't have a great interview presence. And here's now the aesthetic kind of coming into play, because the reality is, Mike, whether you like it or not, when you're president, you've got to exude confidence, man.
Absolutely.
You've got to exude it's just about, when you walk into a room, people have got to feel, all right, he's in the room.
You've got to be presidential.
You've got to be president a little bit. Like, we're not asking you to change who you are, but we're also just saying, like, wear a nice suit and, like, you know, walk different. And I think the challenge with Joe, he just comes across a little bit as like, Grandpa, no, it's Mike. That other guy's named John. Oh, whatever. So it's terrible, I know. But the point I'm making is, you know, those gaps, they don't help. Not that Trump hasn't had any of his own.
Gosh.
Trump has had a million. Trump can't pronounce words. Like, English clearly isn't his first language. But I think from Joe's perspective, people just expect him to be a lot more level-headed. I've seen so many
videos of Trump trying to pronounce words.
Yeah. It's just
any words that have more than like 3 syllables. I've seen Trump just be like, and I'm just like, oh gosh, why is he struggling to pronounce words? But hey, there you go. Right, okay, well that's really quite interesting then. So this cognitive decline point that's been made about how Joe Biden has cognitive decline and he's old and it doesn't help because he has a stutter or stammer, I think it's called. So when he used to have one and he's slowly worked on it. So it's hard because, you know, then when he tries to come back, he might stammer, which
great.
Yeah. To the flame where people go, see, and you go, no, that's stammer, not these.
He's just working on it. Yeah.
It's quite interesting. Right. Well, next week, we're going to take a closer look at some of the interviews and kind of dissect them and take a look at what they're trying to say, but also look at what Trump's America would look like and what Biden's America would look like.
Right.
A little bit more granular into that. But before we leave, what are some of the things you're watching or subscribe to that's keeping you updated on American politics? Because I know some people may be watching going, I want to kind of keep up with these guys over the next few weeks or so. And we're going to be bringing guests as well, guys. We've got writers in America who we're going to be bringing on to talk about Trump, to talk about what's happening. So if you haven't subscribed, do so and turn on your notifications because you're going to want to be a part of this. The show will slowly heat up, and then around the election, you'll see a lot more guests on here, us getting into it and talking about all the moving parts. So you subscribe. But Mike, what are you subscribed to? What are you reading? Of course, the Commentators Network. If you haven't, TCS Network.uk/join. But away from that, Mike, what else are you watching and listening to?
Yeah, I definitely, I rate so highly, and they haven't paid me to say this, but if they want to, that's also cool. The guys at Politico have a great newsletter that really covers overnight, just a very good synopsis of key things that you need to be aware of from the day before, weeks coming, etc. So they have one for the UK, they have one for America, they have one for Europe as well. I'd always try and stay in tune with that. Always stay in tune with what's happening in the Financial Times. Whether you are a finance guy or not, politically, you just need to stay in tune with that. The markets will always respond, well, should respond anyway to political climate. So I make sure I, at the very least, know the headlines of what's going on in that. And then I will controversially say this. I'm watching a ton of right-wing stuff. When I say right-wing stuff, pro-Trump stuff, purely because it gives you a sense of just how certain parts of America and the electorate are thinking that I wouldn't naturally be drawn to. So that's, you know, whether that's Ben Shapiro on the Daily Wire, I check into that. I follow Steve Bannon's War Room Pandemic show. Again, I'm not plugging these. I'm just saying I force myself to watch things that I don't necessarily agree with so that I keep an open mind. And also sometimes it just gives you an idea of where and how Trump might be thinking. And then, believe it or not, I tune in live to the White House press briefings, because again, that gives you an idea live as it happens of what Donald Trump is saying. So yesterday he was at another, he likes to visit these factories, and he was at another factory yesterday where he gets a worker up to say how great he's done. And it's interesting at the very least, yeah. So.
Well, there you've shown people what we do here at the Commenters Network, which is help people leave echo chambers. We're all giving people a chance to consume a wide array of different materials that will challenge them and will stimulate them. So if you like that, you think that's something you're interested in, then join the Commenters Network, tcsnetwork.co.uk/join. And you can be a part of the network. We've got lots of interesting events, virtual events, as well as commentary and videos coming out in the next few weeks. So do subscribe, be a part of the family, and we look forward to seeing you next week. We need to think about a sign out, some sort of like, all right, guys, until then.
We'll figure it out.
I don't know. We'll work it out. But yeah, anyways, speak to you later, or take care, everybody.